be where you're at today if the Lord hadn't got a hold of you?
Absolutely not. There's no way. I honestly, I wouldn't be alive, and I know that.
Nikki, you have an amazing story, an amazing testimony. If you don't mind, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your childhood and what it was like, before things went bad. What was it like?
I was just with my mom and my brother. He would be in and out of the house because he'd go to his dad's. We were always here when it was the yellow building, before it was the big church, as we called it. I used to think it was a normal home.
Yeah.
To me it was, but I now know it was a little bit different, but yeah.
So you were in church regularly. Would you describe that your childhood was happy or normal?
It was normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then did you have a close bond with your mom?
Very.
Yeah.
She was my world. She told me what to do, how to do it, when to stop, how high to jump, but also I ran to her for everything.
Yeah. She seems like a lady, as you've described her to me, she seems like a lady that was very caring and nurturing and affectionate as well.
She could be very tough on you too, but
Sure.
She didn't hold that back. Yeah. But she would always tell me, I'm grooming you into being a complete whole person. When I was like, okay.
So you would say you had a great mom then?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what started happening in your life when you were about 5, 6 years old. Tell us just a little bit about that.
My mom said if I didn't have on wind pants, she wouldn't have heard me kicking the walls. I was choked and almost killed. I had to be taken to the ER that time, and I remember who lived with us. I was pulling bags down the hall to the police at 5 years old saying, just take them away, please. It was, that's when I knew something wasn't right. It was a trickle effect. It went for many years. It turned into verbal abuse, physical abuse, almost rape whenever I was younger. And I was able to defend myself off of this person when I was younger. And thankfully, to be able to prevent some things going extremely far. I started to feel a lot of loneliness because I felt like no one was there to protect me. Even though my mom did a good job, she would always allow this person to come back because of mental health issues and using that as an excuse. And I don't put that in a way that it's looked down on because it's true, but it's not an excuse to let other things happen.
That's definitely right. Maybe what were some of the other feelings that you felt if you think back and you're remembering, I'm a young girl and I feel lonely. What are some other things that maybe you felt or thoughts you had about living in that circumstance?
Fear. I never knew what I was going home to growing up my entire life. I remember as a little girl, I would sit outside sometimes and my mom would be like, why are you sitting on the stairs? Go inside. I'm like, I don't know what I'm walking into. I'm a little skeptical today.
Tell us a little bit about what started to transpire in your teenage years.
I started running the streets. We sold a lot of different drugs. Yeah. Me and my brother would put food on the table when my mom couldn't. She worked 3 jobs sometimes and still wasn't able to provide. I say to the way we wanted her to.
Sure.
She was able to provide for the basics, but we wanted more than that. There were some times when she would lose a job or she would not work enough hours and she's like, okay, the lights are going to get cut off, so we're going to be without it. And I remember very particularly one time where I want to say I was like 6, because we still lived on the south side of Oklahoma, and we had no lights, had no heat. And they came and turned the water off. And I was like, this is it. Like, we're struggling. And my mom asked one person who she thought she could trust with everything, can we come stay with you? And she said no. And the hurt I seen my mom go through at that young of an age was real, but also tried to come over to me and my brother. And at that young of an age, I knew I'm going to make it better than her, and I'm going to take care of her. So when I did get old enough and I was like, okay, you're working 3-4 jobs, let me go and just do this so I can just put money under your pillow. And I did that a lot. She'd come home and be like, what's this on the table? I'm like, I don't know how it got there.
Yeah.
And I just go back in my room and do my homework. Every time I've gotten in trouble too, my mom's told me, you need to do this or this is going to happen, because I know what you're doing now. Like, she started catching on, and then she would tell me a lot, you're not going to live in my house if you do this. And I was like, then your bills aren't going to get paid.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling so bold at that moment talking to her, because I was like, you don't realize like how much I do for you. And then it went from that to full-blown disrespect for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then she opened my eyes very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I just go back with you instead of go with her? Like, you can just put me back in the cell and I'll be fine. Like, I'll be okay. Because I was scared, because she did not play.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she knew I was so hard-headed I wasn't going to listen.
So it seems that you were caught in a pretty intense emotional conundrum. And Mom, I love you, and I want to help, and I see that you need help, and I want to help you. This is what I have available to me as a teenager to help you. And so I'm helping, but you're also frustrated and upset about how I'm going about it.
Yeah.
As any parent would be, that's sane, doesn't want their child to have to do that. But if you think back about that, or if you contemplate that emotional catch-22, and you touched on it just there, but when you feel that, or when you chose to kind of rebel, what were you feeling? Like, what was going on in you?
I wasn't the perfect child anymore. I had this classification that the entire family had always put on me as being the perfect child. You're the straight A student, the ballerina. You're very prim, proper, you do right, you go to church, you go home. And I wasn't. And I was finding my own identity.
I think that leads into some other things. Tell us a little bit about that.
When my mom told me to fix my headlight and I didn't, I knew I seen this officer pull around, and I was like, oh, I have a lot of drugs in this car. I'm about to go to jail. And I did. And then when I got out, I said, okay, I can't do that anymore because now I'm on probation. And I got to find another way to make as much as I am, because I paid my bills, paid my mom's bills, paid my brother while he was locked up. I would send him money. He would call and say, I need this much. And I'm like, okay, I've got you. So I started dancing and started the late night with the wrong crowds of people. But I never, ever lost who I genuinely, truly was. I was told more times than not by so many customers, I don't know why you're in here, because you don't belong here.
Now, how long would you say that you were doing that, dancing?
I would say I took a huge break when I got married. I left everything And I did it for, right about 12 years.
Okay. So jumping forward to when you were 25,
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about what happened.
I came home to be with family because at that time I was still married. My husband was deployed, and we were expecting our first child. And we had decided to put everything in storage and me come home. And then I stayed with my mom and his mom. And at the time I called them Aunt Janet and Uncle Scott. And I had my daughter. And then I came home one day and went to the store. I remember I woke up and it was like a normal day. And I went to the store 3 months and 15 days after I had my daughter. My mom was brutally murdered.
And you came home, as I understand, you found her that way.
The police were in there. I remember coming down the street and I seen the doggy police, as I call them. And then I just seen police everywhere. And I heard God say, I have your mom and she's not in pain anymore. And I knew then, I said, they're at my house. And my sister-in-law said, they're not for us, I promise. And I said, no, he has my mom. She's gone. And I knew. I remember falling to my knees when they said, there's a woman in there and she is deceased. And at that moment I said, everything's been taken, because I didn't know life without her. She was the consistent in my life. No matter how bad I was, no matter how perfect, she was always there. And she loved me regardless.
Tell me a little bit, thinking about that day, it seems like it was quite a whirlwind. You know, my husband at the time was deployed. I have a 3-month-old. Most of my stuff is, in a storage unit somewhere.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I come home and find my mother brutally murdered. When that really starts to hit home, it's quite a day. It was a whirlwind of a day. Probably, I would say 3 or 4 days, just total whirlwind. But when it starts to hit you, my mom is gone. What were some of the feelings that you felt?
Lost.
Yeah. Tell me a little more about that.
I had never imagined living life without my mom. She had things planned up until Estella was 10 years old on her phone.
Yeah.
And I felt sorry for my kid. I felt like she had been robbed of a grandma that she was going to have for her whole life, that adored her, that would do anything for her. It was hard. It was the most darkest time. Even though it was sleeting and snowing the next day, it seemed darker.
Tell us a little bit about who was found guilty for the murder of your mother.
The person who was supposed to love her the most, her husband, it was my stepdad. His name was James. And Jim, everyone called him James. He, the first time I ever seen my mom in a relationship, and all my mom ever wanted was just to be genuinely loved and taken care of. That was one of the things she said she always wanted. For a long time, I blamed myself for leaving and moving. I told myself if I just didn't go to California, it wouldn't have happened. It was hard to not think that. It was even harder to want to live because I felt responsible. I took care of her. I showed her love. I provided for her in multiple ways, financially, mentally, emotionally. I remember thinking one night after I'd moved back to Oklahoma, I remember thinking, I stopped you from killing yourself 3 times. And I saved you. But I couldn't save you from this. And I was here. And that hurt because I felt useless. Like, it was my job to take care of my mom. I used to call her woman. I'd be like, hey, woman, my woman. Because it was my mommy. It was my best friend. We talked every single day. And I realized I failed her. And I felt that way for a long time. I held myself responsible.
Sure.
I was mad because at that time I had to take care of my brother. You left me with your son.
Yeah. That's good.
I was completely distraught. I would look at myself and see her. I would say something and I'd hear it and I'd be like, I let you down. I could not bear that I had failed her that type of way. If I wouldn't have left, if I would have told her, just stop going to the restroom and come with us. The last thing I told my mom was, don't ever let him ask me a question and put me in an argument. It was uncomfortable and I don't like it. Just come with me. And she said, I have to do this the right way.
How long would you say that you carried some of that emotion of guilt, shame, anger towards your stepdad? How long would you say you carried that?
Several years.
Yeah. So you lose your mom at 25 with exceptionally difficult circumstances. Your life's already complicated. You have a husband on deployment and a newborn. Tell us a little bit. You've been carrying, guilt, shame, anger, working your way through even familial confusion. Tell us a little bit about when the Lord started working when you were 30.
I remember feeling if I don't get help, it will be harder. I'm allowing this generational curse to blossom. I'm allowing my daughter to see depression. And I told myself I would never, ever, ever let her see what my mom went through. Because I watched my mom be depressed for years with things my brother would do. I knew if I didn't, she wouldn't be as protected. And I wouldn't. I knew eventually I would take my life because it was hard. Being a single parent's hard. Being a single parent with the knowledge of how my mom died was harder.
Sure.
I remember feeling so sad sometimes when I would come to church because people would be like, I miss your mom so much. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I miss her more. Honestly, because it's like people say that and I've taken 500 steps forward and now I'm 500 steps back and I have to start over.
I'm really glad that you said that, because that's something sometimes that a lot of times people mean well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, we don't blow up on them in the moment because we know what we're trying to do. But I think for the listeners, it's important to understand when any of us is processing, particularly the grief associated with death, it can be tricky.
Yeah.
And it's important to be wise with our words, because I would bet, Nikki, you had days where you walk into church and you feel like, okay, maybe I am moving forward from this. And then it's kind of thrown back in my face is some of what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
And I've observed it as a pastor. And for those who are listening, being wise and being spirit-led is essential. When you're trying to love on somebody who's experienced loss in any capacity, it's good to be wise.
Yeah.
Be very sensitive, because people don't know what you've had to process that week.
Yeah.
Now, tell us what led to you choosing to do Healing the Heart.
My family was very upset. I took the death penalty off the table. I knew why I did it. Even though I was the youngest child, I was over everything, which is very difficult.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Make some choices that you never imagine happening to make. One, as an adult, but as a child. I told myself it was time, because I knew at that moment my life was going to go one of two ways. I was either going to show my daughter what it meant to survive and overcome, and what it meant to be led by God, instead of allowing Satan to win. Because if I allow him to win and I take my life, my mom's legacy dies.
Yeah. And so when you chose, you're at this crossroads. I can either demonstrate, you're grappling with a challenging past. You've lost your mom. You're a single parent, and you're, this is a legal term. You're the executor of her estate. You're having to make these decisions that most people never dream of having to make. So I'm listening to you going, there's this tremendous burden on you, just all these pressures and questions, and you decide, I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to go down the path that, at that time, Nikki was confident this will somehow lead to my passing.
Yeah.
Well, then what does that mean for my daughter? And so what did you decide to do to start going in the right direction?
I asked God, how do I forgive someone who took everything from me? And I heard him clear as day, the same way my son did on the cross when he cried out for me to forgive those who do not know what they do. And that was the day I said, God, I forgive him completely, because if your son can do it, who endured way worse than what I did, I can't do.
Was this before or during or after Healing the Heart?
It was the last day of Healing the Heart.
Yeah. So when you're at that crossroads and you say, I'm going to do something about this, I'm going to find a way forward. You choose to do Healing the Heart, and you come down to that last day.
Yeah.
And for those who are listening, if you haven't ever done Healing the Heart, we get to a portion of that ministry where we talk about grieving losses.
Yeah.
And that essentially means coming to terms with the reality of my life.
Yeah.
The things that I've had to face, the things I've lost. And you get to that moment and you choose, I'm going to forgive. What does that feel like? What's going on in your mind? What are you feeling in your heart when you come to that decision?
Happiness. It was the first time in years that I knew I could be happy again. I could have peace. I could have a new life. The heart God created me with, he transplanted back into me. Here recently in my one-on-one time with God, because I block time. I have a set time for him every night. I've been praying, as you formed me into my mother's womb, and you're changing and reforming me, God, form me to your word, not to the world. Because if I continue to go down the worldly way, I won't ever accomplish what he's called me to do.
You mentioned as we were talking earlier that as you chose to exercise forgiveness towards your stepdad, and I'm hearing you say this now is what's making me think of it, you felt free.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what that feels like when you begin to realize I'm free from a tremendous tragedy.
I don't have night terrors anymore. Not from that. When it's crazy because whenever I'm starting to have a night terror, I'll wake up and I'll be like, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, and I go right back to sleep. But I had a new way of seeing life. I had a new way of seeing myself as an adult, as a parent, as a single parent. I knew it wasn't about me. It wasn't me doing this. It wasn't me doing this change. It wasn't me saying, I'm going to forgive you. It was God saying, you're going to move forward because I'm going to equip you with forgiveness, and I'm going to make sure that your daughter sees it. And that's when it was a new transformation of life.
Nikki, this is a tremendous story, and we're so grateful that you've not just taken the time, but really the courage and the energy to talk about things that are really, really difficult. I want to give you a moment, if you can. What would you say to those who maybe they have a similar circumstance, or anyone, they may say, I don't have a circumstance like that, but I feel some of those same feelings. I feel the darkness, I feel guilt and shame, maybe even deeply depressed or contemplating suicide. What would you say to those people when they're saying, should I do something or should I not? What would you say?
I would say you definitely should forgive. The hardest person to forgive is yourself. And I've learned that over several years. There's some things that I'm working on to forgiving of myself currently. Don't give up. That's the biggest part, is don't give up. Know that God never left you. He's right there with you. He's holding your hand. He has extended it more than once to you to pick you back up. But don't give up. That's the biggest part. Even when you have those thoughts, I remember telling God, if you are who you say you are, and you are telling me I'm called and I'm set apart and I'm going to do these things, and everyone my whole life has been saying the same thing, then I need to know when I come back from vacation, there's no way in the world I can take my life and leave this world. And unfortunately, someone passed very close to my family, and I knew then I cannot leave, because if I do, it won't benefit these two.
Very good.
And God showed me very quickly, I'm here for you. I have you. I never left you. I gave you that heart transplant on purpose. And don't allow the world to form you.